Abortion is a human right, not just for the rich and white.
Supporters of legal abortion rallied in Columbus outside the State House Saturday, joining advocates that gathered in other cities around the state and country.
Because I believe in pro-choice, and I don't like what's happening in America right now. Not giving girls and women and anybody a fair shot, making their own decision about what they want to do with their body. Because we're really, we should all be taking care of each other.
Women deserve the right to make our own decisions about our bodies, and laws need to keep their bans off our bodies and off our health care.
The rallies were hosted by Planned Parenthood and other abortion rights organizations and advertised with the slogan, "Bans off our bodies." Similar protests were held in Cincinnati and Cleveland and nationwide, and more are planned in the weeks to come, leading up to the expected U.S. Supreme Court decision in a Mississippi case. A draft opinion leaked in early May indicated the new conservative majority of justices will overturn Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 decision that made abortion legal nationwide. But it's a draft, and it could change. Ohio is one of around 24 states that could almost immediately ban abortion using laws on the books or pending legislation. Advocates for legal abortion say if Ohio outlaws the procedure, either surgical or by medication, women will have to go to neighboring states to obtain legal and safe abortions. Some doctors who participated in Saturday's rally say banning abortions won't stop it, but will just make it less safe because women will still seek options to end a pregnancy they are not physically, mentally, or emotionally ready to handle.
Because people die in childbirth. People are severely injured in childbirth. We have a horrible maternal mortality crisis in this country and in Ohio specifically. And so women will die.
So as a physician, it's my job to follow evidence-based medicine and healthcare, and all the data shows that it's important for women to have access to reproductive rights, and that's a full scope of reproductive rights includes abortion care.
A Lutheran minister who's worked as a clinic escort at abortion facilities in Central Ohio for the past few years said he and other clinic escorts were on hand to make sure people protesting were safe.
Yeah, we're not going to intervene or tackle anybody, but just making people sure they're aware of these folks who have these GoPros on and they film and then they use it for their PR stuff.
Lexi Hall of Columbus was one of the people Double Eck was talking about. She was part of a small number of abortion opponents who showed up, carrying large signs and wearing GoPro cameras.
Every single human being has value, and I believe that we should all be protected under the law.
Hall and others engaged with the crowd, talking to them about why they opposed abortion. Many abortion rights protesters held up their own signs to try to cover the large signs being held by those who oppose abortion. Republican Attorney General Dave Yost and Governor Mike DeWine are looking into whether the state could immediately resurrect the so-called heartbeat bill, which was put on hold by a federal court. It would ban abortion when a fetal heartbeat can be detected at about 6 weeks into a pregnancy, before many women even know they're pregnant. Both the Republican-dominated Ohio House and Senate are considering bills known as trigger bans that would make abortion illegal as soon as the U.S. Supreme Court would allow states to do so. But though they're deep in the minority, Democrats are fighting back, proposing a constitutional amendment that would guarantee access to abortion and birth control. Representative Michelle Lepore-Hagan says Republicans have made it their top priority to force extreme views representing a minority of Ohioans on the majority, noting polls consistently show more than 60% of Americans support abortion rights.
I'm 8 years short of my medical degree, but this is 50 years short of common sense.
And when asked whether it would be possible to get 3/5 of the legislature to approve this and put it on the ballot directly, Senator Sandra Williams didn't mince words.
And we're not naive enough to believe that the Republican-controlled legislature will pass this proposal, in my opinion. But what I do believe it will do is allow people in the state of Ohio to voice their opinion in the committee process to show all of us, not just legislators, but those of us across the state, that this is something, as the polls have shown, that the majority of Ohioans want.
Details from the Democratic proposal are still pending since the lawmakers have yet to officially introduce the language. They'd need to collect more than 250,000 valid petition signatures to put it before voters. And that would take time, so it wouldn't happen this year. Ohio Right to Life President Mike Ganadakis thinks the text of the constitutional amendment will likely go too far, allowing abortion for any reason at any time, something he says isn't popular with Ohioans, and he says it will fail.
They will fail to get the necessary votes in order for to be on the November 2023 ballot, and I think this is more of a gimmick and a way to appease some of their base leading up to an election.
For now, Ohioans are waiting for the Supreme Court ruling, but the court of public opinion might be the one that really matters because Ohio and the nation are bitterly divided on this issue. Joe Ingles, State House News Bureau.
Later this week, I talked with Dave Yost, a former newspaper journalist, Delaware County auditor and prosecutor, state auditor, and current attorney general.
Well, we've been establishing the foundation for the work that I want to accomplish, from human trafficking through enforcing the rule of law and a number of things on environmental policy. We are set up to make some real home runs in the second term. Also, we're not done with our work on opiates. That settlement in One Ohio has just gotten set up and just gotten started. Same with PBMs and trying to reform that structure, which is distorting the healthcare marketplace immeasurably and hurting Ohioans in some cases.
I have to start by asking you about a story that Democrats, including the judge hearing the case involving Ohio's 6-week abortion ban in Hamilton County, were saying that you should apologize for. The case of the 10-year-old rape victim who went to Indiana to get an abortion. To quote you for an appearance on Fox News, quote, "Every day that goes by, the more likely that this is a fabrication. I know the cops and prosecutors in the state, there's not one of them who wouldn't be turning over every rock looking for this guy and they would have charged him. I'm not saying it could not have happened. What I'm saying to you is there is not a damn scintilla of evidence." And you said shame on the Indianapolis paper who ran the story, and you said they had an obvious axe to grind. There was an arrest in the case. You said, quote, "We rejoice anytime a child rapist is taken off the streets," but you did not apologize. Why didn't you apologize?
Karen, I don't understand what it is you think I need to apologize for. What in that was untrue or inaccurate at the time it said it? By the way, you conflated two separate interviews there.
Well, yeah, there was a Fox News interview, and then there was the statement that you made afterwards, true. But the impression is that you denied the existence of this 10-year-old girl when there are 10-year-old rape victims, and as a prosecutor, you certainly know that.
Of course I know that. The quote you just read didn't say that, nor did anything else in that interview, which I brought helpfully a transcript for you. Nothing in here was untrue. Nothing in here, we didn't even know the identity, I still don't, of that poor victim. So you're asking me to apologize for saying what was true when I said it? Respectfully, that's not very fair, and you're misreading my comments.
Let me ask you about the Hamilton County case involving the 6-week abortion ban, and there's some other information in that directly relates to the guidance you gave in July after all of this happened, where you said that there are exceptions in the 6-week abortion ban, and you offered some guidance on those exceptions. The affidavits in the Hamilton County case say that there are 2 more minors who have left the state to have abortions, 2 women with cancer who couldn't get abortions or cancer treatment while pregnant, 3 women with fetuses with severe abnormalities that couldn't get abortions. So based on that guidance you gave in July, are doctors not following the law, or are they too afraid of what the consequences are? Is the guidance that you've given clear?
Well, you've read it, I hope. It's posted on the website. I think it's very clear. Could the law be constructed better? I'm sure it could be. And I suspect the General Assembly will revisit some of the questions that have arisen. But look, for 50 years, We didn't have a debate about abortion in this country. It was taken out of the democratic process. It was the discussions that we had happened in court between opposing sides. Now, for the first time in 50 years, the vast majority of people that don't want to think about this are confronted with what is the morality of the thing and what should be society's response. We're going to have those conversations. It's an atrophied debate, and it's past time for us to pick it up and go there. Now, my role in all of this as the chief law officer of the state is to defend the law as it is passed by the General Assembly, not to put my 2 cents in or to make the law conform to my beliefs.
On another case, your opponent, Jeffrey Crossman, says you've dropped the ball in the House Bill 6 federal case that he says that the state has jurisdiction and could have prosecuted people on and done more to root out corruption. Is that a possibility? Could you be doing more on the investigation into the nuclear bailout law and some of the things that have resulted from the investigation?
I wonder why you're asking Jeffrey Crossman's questions, but I'm happy to answer. I'm the only one actually who did take action. I went to court when nobody else was moving and successfully got rid of the nuclear bailout, the nuclear subsidy. We also got rid of the decoupling, which is probably too complicated to explain here. But the bottom line is about $2 billion that would have come out of Ohio ratepayers' pockets over the next 10 years or so isn't coming out. Why? Not because of my opponent, not because of the actions of the General Assembly or anybody else, but because Dave Yost went to court. Dave Yost stood up. Dave Yost won. So respectfully, Mr. Crossman doesn't know what he's talking about.
Two top executives with Ohio's largest utility company, AEP, sat down for an in-depth conversation about the future of energy, with the move toward electrification, powering the new Intel plant, and the proliferation of electric vehicles. As State House correspondent Andy Chow reports, they also discussed how policymaking has been affected by the huge scandal-tainted energy law, House Bill 6.
The bribery scheme connected to HB 6 is centered around the nuclear power plant bailout portion of the bill, with First Energy as a key player. First Energy has admitted to bribing Republican former House Speaker Larry Householder and former Public Utilities Commission of Ohio Chair Sam Randazzo for passage of the bill and preferential regulatory treatment. AEP has not been accused of any wrongdoing in connection with the federal investigation. During a forum with the Columbus Metropolitan Club, outgoing CEO Nick Akins said he wasn't going to talk about First Energy, but did say the corruption scandal damages the reputation of the state and energy companies.
It made the whole state look bad, and it made all the utilities look bad. And we suffered from that because we were sort of caught up in the wake of all this activity that was occurring. It was pretty distressing for us. And some of the initial reporting was not good either. But there is certainly, it's an opportunity for us, and the way I see, and Mark, you can correct me, but we've continued to engage with legislators. We've continued to engage with the Public Utility Commission of Ohio, and they've certainly been responsive.
The comments were made within days of the disclosure of text messages between now-fired First Energy executives. In 2019, the former utility bosses said in a chat that Lieutenant Governor John Husted was pushing for lawmakers to pass a 10-year nuclear bailout, even longer than what was on the table at the time. Husted, who had previously denied playing a role in the passage of HB 6, said the policy still had merit, which is separate from the bribery allegations.
There were a lot of people of goodwill out around Capitol Square and around the state of Ohio, labor unions, Republicans, Democrats, others, who thought saving the nuclear power plants was a good policy decision. And they were of goodwill trying to solve that problem. That's separate from what First Energy and Larry Householder were alleged to do, and we will find out whether they committed a crime when that trial occurs. but the two are not the same thing.
While AEP was not impacted by the nuclear bailout portion of HB 6, the bill had provisions gutting renewable energy requirements and eliminating utilities' energy efficiency programs. It also included the extension of a subsidy for 2 coal plants, one in Gallia County, the other in Indiana, owned by a utility collective known as the Ohio Valley Electric Corporation. Ohio's major utilities own a stake in OVEC, and AEP is the largest shareholder. Mark Ryder, AEP president and COO, says ratepayers will now see a credit on electric bills as high as 27 cents a month because that controversial coal subsidy allowed the plants to continue producing at a time when other fuel sources became more expensive.
It's a credit now to bills, and it's going to continue to be a credit as you see power prices and natural gas prices continue to climb. The mechanism is set up as a financial hedge, so there will be periods, and there have been periods, that will be a cost to customers, but it's that hedge and that protection to customers in the event you have what's happening right now when you have spikes in natural gases and power prices. That OVEC is returning money to customers. And like I said, I think we feel that based on what we're seeing, this could be $1 a month for the average customer come January.
Environmental and consumer advocates have been vocal critics of the coal subsidies, arguing that ratepayers should not be on the hook for struggling coal plants when the country is trying to reduce carbon emissions. A statement from J.P. Blackwood, spokesperson for Ohio Consumers Council Bruce Weston, said that their preliminary analysis is that the consumer bill credit is only to remedy past utility overcharges for the coal plants and not that the coal plants became economical. To date, Ohioans have been charged tens of millions of dollars to subsidize AEP, Duke, and AES for the coal plants. The AEP executive said they are consistently working on ways to make the grid more reliable and resilient, while demand for power is expected to ramp up, from the Intel computer chip-making plant to the expected increase in ownership of electric vehicles. Andy Chow, State House News Bureau.
Monday night, it was the event I moderated, the Republican debate for U.S. Senate, featuring all 7 candidates together on stage for the first time. J.D. Vance, Mike Gibbons, Jane Timken, Josh Mandel, Mark Bukita, Matt Dolan, and Neil Patel. The candidates were asked about Ukraine, immigration, religion and government, endorsements from controversial figures such as U.S. Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn, and former Trump advisor Corey Lewandowski. And we led off the 90-minute debate with the questions submitted the most about the 2020 election and some fact-checking.
I want to start with an issue about which we received more questions than any other, so I'll ask this question in a way that represents many of them. It's about the 2020 election. There were more than 60 lawsuits filed by former President Trump and his supporters challenging the validity of the election, all in states that he lost. None of the cases were judged to have merit. Many were tossed out by federal judges who had been appointed by President Trump. Claims that in some states more votes were cast than the number of registered voters have been examined and found to be false. With those facts established, you still claim the 2020 election was stolen, and if so, can you cite specific verifiable facts? And Jane Timken, starting with you.
There's no doubt in my mind there were irregularities and fraud in the 2020 election. When I was chair of the Ohio Republican Party, I worked with the Trump campaign and recruited over 300 attorneys and poll observers to be on the ground to watch what the Democrats were doing to our election. That's how I delivered Ohio for President Trump. And in fact, I caught a Democrat operative and a congressional candidate pushing ballot harvesting, and I referred that person to the Attorney General. There's nothing more important than election integrity, and as I said, there's lots of people who talk about election integrity. I'm the one that actually did it, and I'm proud that I delivered Ohio for President Trump by more than 8 points. It's because I put in the work to make sure we had a safe and secure election.
Neil Patel, you have 90 seconds.
Actually, 2020 presidency election, I said it was stolen. I was exactly campaigning for President Trump across Ohio in 2020. And I see actually by 11 p.m. I went to the bed the election night. I thought the president would be winning. Next morning I wake up, everything was changed. I got surprised. And I said, my God. And then we slowly but surely we're finding out, even like Georgia, 100,000, 90,000 people voted, not even ballot. Some of them totally across the United States, almost, I can say more than 300,000 registered voters, then ballot cast out. That's exactly, I got heartbreaking. I thought, what's going on with this election fraud across the Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then Arizona, all the state. I think that was stolen, and that's when I can say that to you. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder, the claim that Mr. Mattel has just said has been fact-checked and no evidence has been found to support it. That was a false statement, but we're moving on now to Mike Givens.
I was Donald Trump's Ohio finance co-chair in 2016. I supported him throughout both that election and the 2020 election. There are problems with this election. 5 million more people voted than were registered to vote, and that's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. There's a problem. We need to investigate it. The January 6th Commission should be investigating that instead of some false accusation of some kind of insurrection. Recently, there was a Wisconsin special counsel that discovered that a good number of nursing homes in Wisconsin voted at 103% of their occupancy, and they all voted for Joe Biden. We're going to have to investigate these things. But even beyond the numbers, the fact that Hunter Biden's laptop was suppressed for virtually anybody to find out, it's been estimated that 1 out of every 6 voters would have changed their vote if they knew that somehow President Biden was implicated in some of the scandals that are outlined in that laptop. We've got to have fair elections. We need to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
And again, the claim that Mr. Givens just made about more ballots cast than registered voters has been fact-checked and no evidence has been found to support it. We're moving on. Josh Mandel.
Not true.
You have 90 seconds, Josh Mandel.
We've been having these debates all over the state. We've had a lot of candidate forums, and repeatedly, over and over and over with all of us on stage, there's only one candidate up here who has the courage to say what I'm about to say. And every time I say it, the liberal media gets triggered. And every time I say it, the squishy rhino Republicans like Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger, they get triggered too. But I want to say it very clearly for all the rhinos out there and all the media elites out there. The 2020 election was stolen from Donald J. Trump. It was stolen in a variety of different ways. Ballot harvesting in places like Philadelphia, in places like Pittsburgh, in places like Detroit, Michigan, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm the only candidate on this stage who's taken the time to go out to Maricopa County to see with my own eyes where they were auditing the vote. I'm the only candidate on this stage who's calling for an audit of the vote, not just in Arizona, but in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Georgia, and in every state in the nation. Now listen, a lot of the squishy rhino Republicans, they say, well, you can't audit the states where Trump obviously won. My feeling is, of course you can, because he probably won by a higher margin than was even reported. We cannot move on from the 2020 election. We cannot look forward or move forward until 2020 is fully investigated and everyone who cheated in 2020 is prosecuted.
Again, several claims Mr. Mandel made have been fact-checked with no evidence found to support them. We're moving on now to Mark Vakita. You have 90 seconds.
Can we just stipulate that what I'm going to say is not going to be fact-checked by you?
It's your time.
So I want to correct something. I've been saying that the election was stolen from Donald Trump since 2 or 3 days after the election. It's on video, it's on Rumble, it's on YouTube. I've got the receipts. This is a problem that we've had in America. We've got Hunter Biden's laptop. We've got a made-up dossier that started, believe it or not, in the Ukraine. We've got whistleblowers who made up conversations about Donald Trump with President Zelensky of Ukraine. And the media continues to say that none of that is true, even though the FBI, in the case of Hunter Biden's laptop, says it is. We have a problem. We've got the greatest country in the world. We live in the greatest state in the world, or we wouldn't be here. And we are part of the greatest political party ever invented by man. And all three of those have been hijacked by corrupt leadership. I want to go to Washington and eradicate that kind of thinking, personality, and lack of ethics in Washington, D.C.
I guess I don't have to say it since you already said it.
There we go.
Fact checks.
We just saved 15 seconds.
J.D. Vance, 90 seconds.
Well, first, I want to echo something Mark said. So Josh has this talking point that he's the only person who says that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. Well, Mark just said, and I say it all the time, right? I think the election was stolen from Trump. And specifically, Karen, I understand why you got your job and you've got to sort of throw out the fact-check wand and hope that it disappears all the problems that happened in 2020. But let me offer three very specific problems in the 2020 election. And I don't think you'll be able to fact-check them because they're actual facts. One, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, put $435 million to buy up boards of elections all over the country in big battleground states. Independent studies have shown that the money Zuckerberg spent bought Democrat votes and suppressed Republican votes. Number one, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has itself, it's a Democrat-leaning Supreme Court, has held that the Pennsylvania election was not conducted in compliance with Pennsylvania's state constitution or state laws. And number three, they censored, as Mike said, the Hunter Biden laptop story, which again, independent analysts have said cost Donald Trump millions upon millions of votes because the technology companies would not let us talk about the fact that Joe Biden is the leader of the world's biggest crime family. Those are three facts that cannot be fact-checked. And this goes back to the point I made about the difference between talking point politicians and substance politicians. If we want to get to the bottom of what happened in 2020, we need to be able to speak about what actually happened and how we're going to get to the bottom of it. First of all, I'm done with an election season in this country, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back to having an election day. There are a lot of other problems that go from that, but at the end of the day, there were problems in 2020. We can't be afraid to talk about them.
And again, there are a couple statements that have been fact-checked. No evidence found to support them. Let's move on now to Matt Dolan.
Which ones, Karen?
Let's move on to Matt Dolan.
All right, so the lanes are pretty clear here. Let me be very clear. Joe Biden is the legitimate president of the United States. My problem is he's a failed president. And everyone up on this stage wants to go to Washington to look backwards. Well, if you're a family out there fighting inflation, it costs more to put food on your table, it costs more to put gas in your car, that you're worried about your security because we have a party that defunds police, you're worried that our border is wide open and more drugs are coming into this state than ever before. That's what I'm going to Washington to go fight. We need to look forward as Republicans and stop the Biden administration. But then even more so, we need to prepare for the 2024 election and looking forward. And I'm going to go to set an agenda, good conservative policies. Guess what? Some of those policies are the Trump policies that I got done right here in Ohio. If you like less taxes, if you like less regulation, if you like giving parents more ability to choose where their schools go, where their kids can go to school, if you like a government that funds and backs the police, that's what this election is about, looking forward, taking control of Washington, setting an agenda, putting conservative Republican principles in place, and take back this country.